Welcome back to the ATST show, everyone. I hope you all had a great weekend. As always, I am your host, Aiden Davis, and today I have probably the most outlandish, out of left field, just downright crazy theory for the Bad Batch series and how it connects with the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, of course, and Star Wars Rebels. So, with all that being said, let's get right to it. So over the weekend, I rewatched the Bad Batch arc in season 7 of Clone Wars, and I also rewatched the Siege of Mandalore just to hurt myself because I felt pretty sad afterwards, but that's beside the point. In the season 7 Bad Batch arc, the main overall purpose of it is for the Bad Batch, Rex, and Anakin to go save Echo from the Techno Union. Now, one thing that's going on at the same time as this rescue mission is the Battle of Anaxes. Now, for some of you that aren't aware, Anaxes was a main Republic shipbuilding planet during the Clone Wars. And this is why it was a highly sought after asset for not only the Republic, but also the Separatists. That's why the Separatists launched their attack on Anaxes, because they wanted to cripple the Republic's shipbuilding capabilities in the Outer Rim. Now you might ask, Aiden, how do we know that Anaxes is in the Outer Rim? Well, this is proven in the Bad Batch arc. During Anakin's and Padme's secret holo conversation, Anakin says, "The Outer Rim sieges are taking longer than we anticipated." This means that the Battle of Anaxes was a part of the Outer Rim sieges during the final days of the war. Now, in the end of the arc, the Battle of Anaxes ends with a Republic victory, but that Republic victory is almost soured by the actions of Admiral Trench, because he didn't want to rely upon the algorithm alone that came from the Techno Union. He had a failsafe in the form of a bomb that was located at the main ship production facility on the planet of Anaxes, specifically next to the main reactor of that facility. Now, while the Bad Batch is on Admiral Trench's command ship, trying to figure out how to turn a Republic defeat into a Republic victory this time, Echo mentions that if the bomb goes off on Anaxes, it could be so catastrophic that it could destroy the entire planet of Anaxes due to the chain reaction created by the bomb being detonated right next to the main reactor of the primary shipbuilding facility on Anaxes. Now, let's fast forward to Bad Batch. The Battle of Anaxes is won, Order 66 has happened, and the Empire is starting to get on its feet. Now, it's kind of established in the second episode of Bad Batch that the Imperial military are seizing any and all military assets that they could find, whether it be Republic assets and or Separatist assets. Now, let's go with the train of thought that after the bomb was deactivated at the end of the Battle of Anaxes, let's just say the Republic was like, hey, this is some pretty powerful ordnance. Why don't we just keep this around on Anaxes? We'll move it later on. But let's say this doesn't happen because Order 66 happens, the downfall of the Jedi Order happens, the rise of the Empire happens, so assets at this point in time, military assets like ordnance, such as the bomb, are kind of left up in the air. Now enter the character of Vice Admiral Rampart, who we are also introduced to in the second episode of the Bad Batch. From what I gathered in his short holo speech, it seems like Vice Admiral Rampart is a guy that deals with the logistics of the greater empire. Now, his speech was specifically about the economics of the empire and how they're changing from Republic credits to Imperial credits, and how every Imperial citizen should apply for a chain code because that's the only way they can travel now. But you know what? Him being a vice admiral, it makes sense that his main concern wouldn't be with the economics of the empire. That would most likely fall onto some official elected member of Palpatine's entourage to deal with the economics of the empire. It makes sense to me that since Rampart is such a logistics-based guy, he could also be in charge of ship production located in the Outer Rim. Now, it's no secret that Seleucami is located in the Outer Rim, and we also know that Anaxes is located in the Outer Rim. Now, I'm going to add a whole nother level to this. In the very first trailer of The Bad Batch, I want to say, we get this shot of these two scrappers in ponchos overlooking a graveyard of Venators. This, of course, leads us to believe that we see the planet of Braca in the trailer. It makes sense that during the Bad Batch's exploits, they are definitely going to take some jabs at the Empire. They already have in Episode 2. They shot up a whole spaceport and they escaped. That's a pretty big deal because they killed a whole bunch of clones. Who's to say that the Bad Batch, being who they are, want to take it to the next level? But here's the thing. The Bad Batch is out of the loop and they need intelligence. Now, since they're enemies of the Empire, where can they get intelligence about possible targets? Now, I would say Saw Gerrera because they have met him, but I think at this point in time, Saw Gerrera's main purpose is still the freedom of Onderon. He hasn't really focused on rebelling against the Empire on a galactic scale. But you know who probably dislikes the Empire as much as Saw Gerrera? Probably some underworld assets or groups that the Bad Batch will probably deal with, since they're basically going to become guns for hire. Now, let's say in exchange for a job that the Bad Batch does for one of these shady figures, they want intelligence on a potential Imperial target. The best that this contact can come up with is just the name of a planet. All I have to give you is Braca. There's this planet called Braca. It's a ship-breaking planet. That's all I know. You'll have to figure out how to use this information. So let's say the Bad Batch go to Braca, kind of, ask around about what the purpose of the planet is overall. And on face value, it's ship-breaking and breaking down old Venators to make new ships. Because if you break down an old ship, you can use those same components to make brand new ships. And my guess is that Braca was a part of the Outer Rim sieges because we see Jaro Tapal and, of course, his Padawan Cal Kestis fighting the Battle of Braca in the waning hours of the Clone Wars. They had just secured Braca, so it makes sense that it was a part of the Outer Rim sieges. So the Bad Batch, they're looking for a target. All they get is the name Braca. They know about this Vice Admiral guy who's big into logistics, which probably goes beyond economics and is probably also related to the strength of the Imperial Navy. They find out that Braca is the main provider of shipbuilding materials to the planet of Anaxes. They are familiar with this planet because they were invested in the Battle of Anaxes during their arc in the Clone Wars. Now, let's just say they sneak onto a cargo hauler with ship components or a transport ship or whatever you want to call it. It's bound for Anaxes with shipbuilding materials to create new Imperial designs that have just been established, aka the Imperial Star Destroyer. Because, fun fact if I'm remembering correctly, on the box art of Vice Admiral Rampart's Black Series figure, there is a Imperial Star Destroyer, not a Venator, but an Imperial Star Destroyer on it. So it's safe to say that Imperial Star Destroyers have immediately gone into production. On their way to Anaxis from Braca, Hunter tells Tech, "Hey, let's see what we're dealing with on Anaxis. Why don't you pull up the inventories of some of the Imperial bases on Anaxis, because it's just us. It's just us going in. We don't have a lot of firepower." Well, lo and behold, guess what Tech finds in one of the Imperial bases on Anaxis? The leftover Separatist bomb. The Bad Batch covertly transport the bomb to the main ship production facility on the planet of Anaxis. They set it right next to the reactor, just like Admiral Trench did far back while the Clone Wars were still going on. They, sneak back onto another transport ship bound for Braca, getting more materials for the planet of Anaxis. They leave and they detonate the bomb, and the Bad Batch, most likely Wrecker, is responsible for the destruction of the planet of Anaxis and the death of a prominent Imperial Admiral, which in this case would be Vice Admiral Rampart, because I have the feeling, like I said previously, he's a logistics guy. Economics, military strength, Army and Imperial Navy. So they've just dealt a huge blow to the Empire in the Outer Rim. And this is probably a factor that gets Crosshair back onto their scent again, because at this point in the series, he is chasing after them and he is hunting them down. So like I said, to sum it all up, my prediction is that the Bad Batch will be responsible for the death of a high up Imperial figure in Vice Admiral Rampart, and the destruction of an Imperial asset in the form of Anaxis, because it's an important shipbuilding planet in the Outer Rim. Now, to back up my theory even further, in the first season of Star Wars Rebels, there's this episode where Sabine and Hera go to a Republic military base to pick up supplies for Fulcrum, aka Ahsoka. Now this base, I believe this already has been proven, this base is the same one we see from Season 7 of Clone Wars, which was on Anaxis. And guess what? This base is now on one of several asteroids that used to be Anaxis, and this is further backed up by the fact that we see the same creatures on Anaxis that were in the military base, hiding and waiting for someone to come. They were protecting all the Rhydonium that was at the base or whatever. And there was the Queen one that Ezra would go on to control against the Grand Inquisitor. But that's it. That's my theory. Overall, my theory is that the Bad Batch will have a role to play in the death of Vice Admiral Rampart, because they're looking to take a jab at the Empire, and they can't jab as high as Tarkin, because that would be pretty difficult, because he is super important to the Empire. But Vice Admiral Rampart isn't as much of an asset. He's just a logistics guy, just as I theorized previously. So not only that, they're responsible for the death of a prominent Imperial figure, and they're also directly involved with the destruction of Anaxis, because it's a shipbuilding planet in the Outer Rim. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think there's any validity to my theory? I think there's some. there's some spider webs that can be connected with the information that we've gathered throughout all three of the series: Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and even Star Wars Rebels. Most likely, the Bad Batch won't be directly responsible for the destruction of an Axis, but they will be vital in either gathering information or intel that will eventually lead to the destruction of an Axis by a figure such as Saw Gerrera, because as we all know, Saw Gerrera gets pretty radical in the ways that he deals with the Empire. Anyway, that's it for the video. Like I said previously, let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Aiden Davis. This has been the ATST Show, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.